Owning an electric vehicle can be a lot of fun, from the experience of having instantaneous torque through to never having to buy gasoline again, reduced service costs, and if you are really lucky, being able to wake up to a full tank every morning. EV ownership never gets old. Nor for those with electric cars, vans and trucks is being able to defrost your vehicle on a cold winter morning or cool it down on a hot summer's day before heading out. But while things are great when everything is working as it should, things can become an absolute nightmare if something bad happens to your vehicle. And for once, I'm not talking about poor after-sales service for a recall or a faulty component. I'm talking about what happens when your vehicle is involved in an accident. I've already given you some tips and pointers for what to do if you happen to suffer the misfortune of finding yourself in an EV accident. I'll link to that video in the down below. But today, we're going to talk about why so many EVs seem to get written off by insurance companies after the kind of collisions, mishaps and whoopsies that traditionally, at least, you might expect an internal combustion engine vehicle to metaphorically bounce back from. Because while EVs are great, they are more likely to get written off after an accident. Today, I'm going to try and explain why. Time to put your seatbelt on. We regularly hear from people who have been involved in an electric vehicle collision, had their vehicles vandalised, or discovered that a flood, tornado, fire, or some other quote-unquote act of God has rendered their vehicle in need of serious repair. And just a few weeks ago, Electrek reported that we're now seeing fairly large examples of Tesla Cybertrucks popping up on insurance auction sites. Sometimes the damage is noticeably visible, such as a smushed front end, but other times the damage is less clear, as was the case earlier this year when a Fisker Ocean was written off for a damaged door hinge, or when a Rivian was written off because of a partly damaged underbody panel. All of the examples I've just cited are for different categories of damage, which all influence how and why a vehicle is written off. So let's go through some of them now and look at some of the other reasons why EVs are written off more regularly than comparable gasoline vehicles. Luckily, while I've been driving for more than 25 years, I've needed to get post-collision repair fairly infrequently, and in most of those cases, the collisions weren't my fault, but someone else's. Of the two vehicles that I had that were written off, one was a plug-in Prius that I'd made myself and not decided to put a proper thermal management system in. So when one of the 3 in-series nickel metal hydride packs under the subfloor decided to short and cause a thermal runaway, I didn't know about it until the battery pack started to pop like popcorn. Something that caused the insurance adjuster to instantly write the car off because battery components sprayed onto the inside of the rear hatch wasn't an easy or affordable thing to fix. And of course, the other was my first F-150 Lightning, which I'm going to politely suggest these photographs show why it was a total loss. There was also one other time I had a low impact, my fault, collision with the back of a Land Rover in my first Renault Twizy. But the collision was so weird and frankly unusual that Renault actually asked to swap out my Twizy like for like so that it could examine my vehicle to figure out what actually happened to the roll cage. So that didn't actually go through insurance. I guess luck was on my side that day. So yeah, I sadly had some experiences of insurance write-offs, but in those cases the reasons the car was getting written off were pretty obvious. So what about the ones that aren't? Well, to examine that, let's acknowledge something important about all modern vehicles, regardless of their fuel type. They're much more complicated than they used to be. The more advanced technology a vehicle has, the more complicated it is to work on, and therefore the more expensive its routine and accident repairs can be. It might be easy to assume that this is just a EV thing, but it's actually a industry-wide thing, drivetrain agnostic, in fact. Systems that were once simply mechanical now often have precision electronic components attached to them in order to improve reliability, safety, and convenience. Repairing a part of a vehicle with a precision component generally adds extra complexity and cost to the process. It sometimes even adds the requirement for specialist equipment that your local mum and pop repair place may not have, and again, that can drive up the cost. That will, and does, influence an insurance company's decision on if it should authorise repair or simply write a vehicle off. In the EV world, though, repairs not getting authorised and vehicles being written off usually comes down to one of three different things. Either the vehicle is built in a way that makes it complex or expensive to repair, or there are limited parts availability, which makes repairs either impossible or super lengthy, or there's significant concern that the battery pack or high voltage system has been damaged in some unseen way that could affect future safety for a repaired vehicle. So we're going to deal with them in order. The first one being complexity and expense. And that has a lot to do with the way the vehicle is designed by the automaker. In the case of those early crashed Tesla Cybertrucks we're now starting to see on auction sites, I'm guessing the repair has been rejected for a few reasons, but among them is the difficulty in repairing a Cybertruck. Tesla made a lot of noise about the fact that the Cybertruck is made from a monocoque frame made of different alloys, both aluminium and steel are used, as per Tesla's own website, with stainless steel body panels providing the quote-unquote exoskeleton. I know it's not really an exoskeleton, and Tesla appears to have changed its Cybertruck manufacturing and design a little since its original reveal, to make its design and manufacturing a little more conventional than that early prototype, but for the purposes of this video, I am going to use exoskeleton because of the sheer strength of those stainless steel body panels. These exterior panels, being stainless steel, are very difficult to bend and shape, which is one reason why the Cybertruck looks like it was designed on a 1980s Apple II. And despite what you may or may not think about the Cybertruck's crash test capabilities or its safety for vulnerable road users, it's fair to say that if and when a Cybertruck body panel gets damaged, it's because it's been involved in a sizable collision. And it's not just the physical damage to a vehicle that insurance companies have to evaluate. It's the materials that will be needed to repair said damage. And stainless steel is going to be much harder to repair than more traditional body panel materials. In a similar vein, if your car has a sizable amount of carbon fibre reinforced plastic body panels, like you'd find in the BMW i3 or BMW i8, you'll find that they will factor into the vehicle's repairability. While BMW did work very hard when launching both of these vehicles to train dealerships and repair specialists to be able to repair carbon fibre reinforced plastic, and it's worth noting that CFRP panels require far fewer resources to build in the first place and thus have a much lower carbon footprint than steel or aluminium, BMW has ultimately given up and gone back to more traditional construction materials for its vehicles because the repair techniques and higher repair costs associated with CFRP were a headache for everybody. And yes, this does now increase the energy requirements for manufacturing of BMW's vehicles, but it also makes repair more affordable and straightforward down the line. Oh, and don't think that just because your car is made of aluminium, it's easier to repair either. As per several locals I know in the repair industry, aluminium can be a complete pain to repair. It's actually more difficult to weld than steel, and its properties can be physically changed after an impact. For example, when we hit a deer in rural Oregon a few years ago, my Chevrolet Bolt EV's bonnet required replacement, even though it had a relatively small amount of damage, because the time and the skills required to beat that bonnet back into shape would have cost more than just simply replacing the panel with a brand new one. The more you know. With the design of vehicles taken into account, let's now look at the challenge of parts availability, which I'm going to suggest may have also played a part in getting those early production Cybertrucks written off. Parts availability for new vehicles has always been kind of sketch, especially if your vehicle is made in small volumes or is made by a reasonably small company. We're all familiar with how the automotive parts industry melted down during COVID due to chip shortages and supply chain failures. But when automakers bring a new model to market, it's frankly not unusual for there to be a chronic shortage of replacement parts. That's because the automaker is focused on ramping up production, and initial quantities of parts tend to be smaller than they are later on in a vehicle's production run. In areas where your vehicle is sold in reasonably large volumes, it's often easier to get spare parts, but if your vehicle was made overseas and is just new to the market, good luck. The same goes for vehicles that aren't common where you live. For example, when we still lived in the UK, we had a UK spec right-hand drive Chevrolet Volt with a V that suffered some substantial front-end damage shortly after we purchased it, after a motorcyclist lost control of their bike on a corner, sending the bike into the front of our car. While GM sold the Ampera in Europe in sizable volumes and had spare parts for that, the parts we needed for our Chevrolet Volt weren't exactly the same, despite both vehicles having a common platform, and we had to wait for months for the parts to arrive from the US to fix our car. It frankly sucked, and by the way, our insurance company nearly did have that car written off because of parts availability. In more recent times, vehicles like the Fisker Ocean and VinFast VF8 have suffered as a consequence of their respective automakers' poor supply chains. Just a few weeks back, in fact, I heard of a Fisker Ocean owner whose car was written off by their insurance company because it was impossible to find new replacement door hinges to fix the hinges that had been broken on her car following what was a very small door ding. Enterprising sorts might have been able to have bodged something together, but for insurance companies, which, let's face it, are risk-averse, it's not okay to replace a stock component with something you've rustled together from other vehicles, even if it might technically fit and or work. Which brings me to the final type of insurance write-off for EVs: battery damage. Or rather, more often, suspected battery damage. Remember I just said that insurance companies are risk-averse? Well, this is where we see just how risk-averse they actually are. I think we all know that regardless of the type of fuel a vehicle runs on, the potential for some form of fire or explosion is non-zero. For gasoline and diesel vehicles, there's a risk that a fuel leak onto a hot exhaust or an electrical short can cause the car to become on fuego. And for hydrogen fuel cell vehicles post-collision, there's the potential for a high-pressure fuel leak, which could, in the right circumstances, also lead to a fire or worse. And of course, in the EV world, a battery pack that's not 100% can suffer an internal short circuit, which could lead to high temperature, high current power transfer, which in turn is likely to cause a fire. The first one is, of course, much easier to guard against. You can check a fuel system for leaks. The auto industry has had tools to do that for years, and fuel tanks are relatively easy to replace if there's a concern about a dented or otherwise non-pristine fuel tank post-collision. In the case of a hydrogen fuel cell vehicle, though, leaks would generally be pretty easy to spot given the incredible pressures present in their fueling systems. That said, because hydrogen fuel cell vehicles are still very much in the ultra-low volume category and few companies make them, it's almost a given that FCVs will be written off rather than repaired. Remember, insurance companies are risk-averse. And for EVs, that risk aversion goes into overdrive, often because battery packs are sealed units containing hundreds or even thousands of cells, and because even small, microscopic damage to a battery pack can ultimately lead to a cell short circuit. Insurance companies nope out of there like my eldest border collie Ghost nopes out of the family room when he hears a drill on TV. No, I'm not sure why he hates the sound of drills. He always has, and as far as I can tell, there's never been any trauma there. Our other border collie couldn't care less, but as soon as he hears one, he's off somewhere safe as soon as he hears a drill start. Poor guy. Because EV battery packs are so massive and so expensive, as soon as there's any suspicion of an impact anywhere near a battery pack, the insurance company simply opts to write the vehicle off. In the case of my F-150 Lightning, while it did ultimately sell at auction for just under $22,000, and I assume the battery pack will end up in another vehicle, the insurance company didn't want to take on the risk that the battery pack was damaged in any way, shape or form. And because the power line guy wire had ripped off one of the two side steps, there was concern from the insurance adjuster that the forces involved had indeed twisted or pulled the battery pack in a way that would have caused potential problems with it further down the line. That, plus the other frame and body panel damage, made my truck's write-off pretty much a done deal. Without X-ray battery scanning to physically see inside the battery pack, or AI-driven digital twins to compare a pre-collision battery pack to a post-collision one, I honestly don't expect how we're going to see any kind of change in how insurance companies view battery packs, although I should note that digital twin battery tech isn't that far away in high-end models. Porsche, for example, is looking to commercialise that technology in future EV models from the brand. In finishing, though, it's probably worth noting that many written-off EVs ultimately end up back on the road. At least they do in parts of the world where it's legal for that to be the case. In the UK, for example, there are strict rules about what type of insurance write-off can be re-registered, and the TLDR there is that if there is any hint of structural damage, the vehicle is usually prohibited from being put back on the road. But where it is legal, folks like Sam Crack and Rich Benoit and a bevy of other EV repair enthusiasts have chronicled in detail the process of rebuilding and re-registering all manner of broken, written off and otherwise unloved EVs from a variety of different manufacturers. And if they can do it, why can't the insurance companies? I'll give you one clue. Yep, that's right. It's all down to risk. Risk, risk, risk. And avoiding it at all costs. For a start, you should know that insurance adjusters who drive around to view cars prior to repair aren't given a massive amount of time to evaluate each car they see. Sometimes they even have to just write them off on photographic evidence alone. But their evaluation process costs insurance companies money, and insurance companies do not like spending money. Sure, you could get someone to drop the pack and inspect it and conclude that, yeah, it's probably okay to carry on using it. But that person and their experience and their time costs a lot of money, and that eats into insurance companies' profits. It's frankly easier and safer for insurance companies to just cut their losses and move on, especially for vehicles they know less about, like EVs. Then, if we add in lowering residuals for EVs in the current climate due to prices falling across the entire industry, and insurance companies take the safest option. As a driver and an owner, is there anything you can do to ensure your vehicle is repaired? Honestly, I'd love to say yes, but I don't see any. If the accident is bad enough, you will see your vehicle get written off. In many countries, you are allowed to essentially buy your vehicle back from the insurance company and repair it yourself, but that requires you to take on all the risk, which I suspect is frankly for another video. In the meantime, just remember to make sure you've got adequate insurance to cover your vehicle becoming a total loss if you happen to be paying off a loan or you have other types of finance packages, because at the end of the day, assuming you're physically okay, when it comes to vehicles and insurance, the only thing worse than having to find a replacement vehicle is having to find a replacement vehicle while still paying for the one that just got written off. Thanks for joining me today, and if you've got thoughts, make sure you leave them below in our Discord chat room, or you can reach out to us on Mastodon. Thanks to the amazing list of people scrolling by on your screen right now. They are some of the more than 1,500 people who help fund this channel through Patreon and YouTube. They help cover our bills, pay our team, and they make sure that we can remain 100% independent. If you'd like to join them and see your name listed here, just follow the links below. There are a range of different tiers you can sign up for, from as little as $1 a month, or if you pay yearly, just over $10 a year. A massive welcome to our newest supporters: Carol Bulawa, Rolfondo, Michael Owen, Winter, and Wilton Live. To join the list and get your shout out, become a paid Patreon member for your week of fame. And of course, if you'd like to support us with a one-off donation, you'll find links below to make Ko-fi and Bitcoin donations. We even have a good old-fashioned PO box that you can reach us at. Address you'll find linked below. And of course, if you're in need of some swag, you'll find our swag store in the down below as well. This month, we are celebrating Pride with an amazing new t-shirt design by our in-house artist and animator, Erin. You can get yours today by heading to our Redbubble store. We've also got some fantastic content coming up, so make sure that you've hit the subscribe button on either PeerTube or YouTube, and we'll see you soon. We make new videos every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. If you want more, the mighty algorithm thinks you'll like this video, but we think this one is also well worth a look. See you soon, and as always, keep evolving.